Okay, so let's start. So welcome everyone. Today we'll have a webinar where we talk about isolated modules in AirGap. I'll give a brief introduction into what AirGap is for those of you who don't know, and then we'll dive deeper into what isolated modules are and how they work, how you can create one, and how they help the AirGap solution to be even more secure. So let's start. First of all, what is AirGap? Basically, AirGap allows you to turn a smartphone into a cold wallet. It does so by, or you do so by installing the application AirGap Vault on a dedicated smartphone, and then all of the communication channels like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular connections, they're turned off, and it behaves like a traditional hardware wallet. It has no connection with the outside world, and the connection with the online part is actually done through QR codes and not with a cable. And this is very important because QR codes, well, they can be used, or they are like a one-way channel, meaning that you can't have bidirectional communication where, well, you can't see what is sent through a cable because you can see and verify what is inside a QR code, and then you know what the other side receives, and you can check if your key would be leaked in such a QR code. So it's overall a more secure way of transferring data compared to a cable. Yes, so as mentioned, we have one app called the AirGap Vault, which is taking the part of the, well, is installed on the dedicated smartphone, and is this part that handles the security. And that's also the part that holds your mnemonic and private keys. And then there is the other wallet, which is called, or the other app, which is called AirGap Wallet, which holds only the publicly available data, for example, your address and the public key. That's also the app that talks to the blockchain and the internet, so that's where you can see the current prices and the balances and so on. But the security relevant part, like the private key, never leaves the secure phone. Now, there are a couple of issues with traditional hardware wallets. So as I mentioned before, some of them, they're still not truly air-gapped, meaning that they use a cable to connect. So they are not what I would consider real cold wallets, but maybe kind of warm wallets. So they're not hot wallets that are directly connected, but they still have like a connection to a device that is connected to the internet. Yes, so basically traditional hardware wallets, I covered the first point, they're using cables usually, which have some downsides, like it's bidirectional communication, and you can't really verify what's being transmitted. There's also the problem of the supply chain attacks. So you can't, because it's one specific device that everybody has, a malicious actor can specifically try to infiltrate the supply chain and add some malicious hardware to it. Whereas with our solution, because you can use any kind of phone, this is not possible, because you're free to choose whatever device that you want. Another thing also that because it's completely free and open source and you can just download the app, we don't collect any addresses. So what happened, for example, to Ledger with the data leak that they had, that cannot happen in our case. And then another point is the usability. So a lot of hardware wallets, they still have a very small screen, and the usability is not that great because you use the buttons to interact with it, whereas with AirGap you can use the big screen of your phone. And then of course also the availability. So AirGap is available all around the world because there's no barrier to entry. You can just download the app. Okay, so enough about like the hardware wallets. Let's talk about wallets in general and how the isolated module feature that we introduced helps to mitigate some of the common risks. So as we can see here. So there are the one of the issues that wallets have is, if we talk more on a technical level, is that every development team uses dependencies when they work. So they use kind of code that other people wrote to do things like cryptographic operations and things like that. Because of course you shouldn't, not every developer can develop everything. So you use other people's code. But the problem is that some of those packages could contain malicious code that does something that you don't want, which also means that they could try to leak secrets to some server of a malicious actor. Another common problem of wallets is that one mnemonic is used for all coins, meaning that, for example, the Bitcoin and the Ethereum implementations, they have access to the same mnemonic, meaning that if one of the two has a problem and it leaks the secret to a server, then both of the assets are compromised. And yeah, so that's the last point as well. So I touched on it a little bit. So the common architecture is usually that you have one application, and then in our case we have like a web view that runs the application, and then all of the integrations, all of the coins, all of the dependencies, they're kind of together in this one context, as we can see here in the picture. So why did we do isolated modules? The main reason is because we wanted every module, meaning every currency, to run in isolation. This has a couple of advantages. One is that it allows users to load new modules and also to remove modules that they don't want. It also enables onboarding of new developers because they can write their own modules easily and test and distribute them as they wish. It also kind of embraces the open source and the open source aspect, and we can work together with the community more because it doesn't, we don't have to kind of whitelist all of the modules that exist. People can just play around with it and distribute it by themselves. And one thing that we have heard sometimes is that people want to have a version that is Bitcoin only, exactly because of the reasons that I mentioned, with the fact that other modules can kind of conflict or tamper with, some modules can tamper with other modules. So that's why it can be a good thing to just have one currency. And with this isolated module feature, this is something that is that would be possible. It's not possible today because we ship all the modules that we have by default, but it would be easy to kind of take the base AirGap and then only add the Bitcoin module. So this is basically the improved architecture, which, as you can see now, every single asset or coin is isolated in its own module, meaning that they cannot interact with each other. One important thing, because I mentioned this earlier, that usually all of the modules have access to the same mnemonic. So what we do here is actually we add in a kind of an abstraction layer in the middle, which means that the modules themselves, they do not get access to the full mnemonic. We do the derivation of the, well, we do a derivation before we hand the derivative to the module. What this means is that even if somehow one of the modules would be malicious and would manage to leak the information that it has access to, it means that only that asset is compromised. The other assets would still be secure because from the derived key, you cannot go back to the mnemonic. So this is an additional security feature that we have. So yeah, basically touching on this again. So every module runs in its own context, meaning that it has access to a very limited piece of information, not everything. If there is malicious code in one module, it cannot affect the others or the main app. And yeah, as I mentioned, it only has access to the derived keys and not the mnemonic. So it's basically just like Legos, where AirGap, where we build a secure base, and now the developers can come and they can build their own modules and put it on top. So that's basically the aspect where we hope that the community can now contribute and make the solution even better while we provide the secure base. We also have one example of such a module that has already been released, which is rootstock. So this module is a little special because it was developed by the rootstock team, but it has been audited by the AirGap team, which is why we shipped it in the latest version of AirGap. But it is done as such an isolated module, and we hope in the future that more developers come and develop such modules with new chains. So now let's dive a little bit deeper into the technical aspects. So AirGap has always had this architecture of basically being chain agnostic, meaning that it would be easy to add new coins to it. Because if we kind of look at it from far away, how it works is very similar for all of the chains. So you have the offline part, the vault, that holds the private key, and then you have some kind of companion app that does the communication with the blockchain. It gets a list of transactions, it can check your balance and do all of those. But it's basically very clear that the offline part has very limited set of features that it needs to do. So it needs to be able to work with the private key, it needs to generate an address, and it needs to be able to sign operations. Whereas the online part is a little bit more complicated, like I just mentioned, getting transactions, balance, and so on. So we basically split up these two things. So we have an offline and an online protocol. So this is the kind of the base that we see. The base protocol, that's basically available on both sides. But now there are two, as I mentioned, these two protocols. The online protocol, as we can see, is a little bit more complicated. So it basically has a method to get the balance. It has a method to get the transaction history. It can also prepare a transaction, very important. So it checks like what the nonce is and so on from the network, and then prepares the transaction with the correct recipient and amount and so on. And then in the end, you have a method to broadcast and send the transaction to the network, of course, after it has been signed by the offline part. As you can see in this interface, it doesn't have anything related to how the two apps are kind of working together, because this is all abstracted away. So if you write your own isolated module, you only have to worry about the coin specific features, like where do you get the information from, transaction history, balance, and so on. The rest, how something is sent to the vault to be signed, that is handled by AirGap. And then you have the offline protocol, which is a lot simpler. So basically you can just get a key pair from this derivative that I've talked about before, and then you can sign a transaction by using the secret key. So I think that's basically it for the theoretical part. Now let's have a look at an example. So what we are going to do now is whoops, that's the wrong side. So we prepared an example module that is based on the Bitcoin module that we provide by default, like the official module. And we will now look a bit at the code, and then we will actually build this module and install it on an app, on a phone. Okay, so let's dive into here. So we basically have this this folder, the isolated module folder. If you try to build your own module, then there is documentation on how to do it. So I think, let me see where I have it. It's here. So we have documentation here, how to add new blockchains to AirGap with isolated modules. That goes into a lot of details on how, like, what kind of code you need to provide, how it needs to be structured, how the signature works, how the bundling works, and so on. We do also have tools available that make this a little easier for you, and we'll see that in a minute when we actually build the project. So now let's go back to the code. So we can see here, without going into too much detail, we have this starting point, which is basically creating a Bitcoin module. And in here, we have a couple of, there are a lot of type definitions where you see like that kind of is the TypeScript part where you have type safety, and it makes development easier. So the Bitcoin module is basically responsible for actually creating the online and the offline instances of this protocol. And in the case of Bitcoin, we actually have two different implementations. We have the legacy implementation and we have the SegWit implementation. So the core of it all is in here. So in this file, we have a lot of metadata. So for example, the name of the module, we have things like the standard derivation path, some regex on how the addresses look like. So these are things that have to be defined for each blockchain. If you want to create a new one, you will have to provide the one specific to that chain. And then we have things like a get address from public key that we saw in the slides before. And also somewhere is probably the sign sign transaction with secret key. So all the methods that we saw before, they're in here, and you basically just have to, as a developer, you just have to implement the coin specifics. So how a transaction is signed and how it's represented and so on. Yes, so I think we won't go too much into the details of the code, but let's try to actually follow the steps and build this example module. So we do an npm install first. I think I did that already, so it should be fast. So now we have all the, so we're in the folder of the Bitcoin example. So this is basically, if you have your own module, then this is the way you would create a zip file that can then be used as an isolated module. And by the way, I think before we start, I can quickly show you that we have this AirGap community repository. And in here, you can see we have some isolated modules. And we now have one, which is the rootstock one that we saw before. So basically what this means is in here, we have the repository where they have their isolated module, plus the commit hash of the version that we audited and approved, along with some build instructions and the signature to verify that it's really the team, the same team. For example, if they provide an update, then the signature needs to match, or the public keys need to match as well, in order to actually being able to update the module. So yeah, I mean, this one we can't see, and this is just a regular package JSON that specifies the name where this will be available on npm. Okay, so let's go back to Bitcoin. So we followed the first step. We did an npm install. So now let's build the module. So it now generates it transpiles from TypeScript to JavaScript and creates some of the files that we need or that are needed internally. Then we have to copy the asset that we want to include. So in this case, we have a picture of Bitcoin. So we copy that into the module. Then this is basically to showcase it in the real world. You would probably already have your key pair, but this is very important to keep this key pair safe, because that's how you authenticate that you are the developer of a module. So let's quickly generate a key pair here. So we can see we have the secret key and the public key. They are stored in this file here. Then now we have to add a few things to the manifest. So we have this in the module folder, we have this manifest. So here is like the name and the version of the and the description of the module. So in here we add an author, so this is test, plus we have to add the public key that created this module. So I'll use the one that we just generated. And then we also have to specify the namespace. So I will add this here. This is all documented in the documentation, so you don't really we don't have to go into too much depth here. So then we define the where the logo is located, and then we have to define which files are included or part of this module. So we have the JavaScript file that we generated, it's like a minified file if we take a look here. So it's like all of the dependencies and everything that our module needs is in here. And we specify that we need this, and then we also want to have the icon. So then this is not relevant for us, so then we have the finished file. That's this one. And then we have to run sign module. What this does is basically it takes the key that is in this key pair file and it creates a signature, so the app can verify that we are really we are allowed to make changes here. It's really us who make these changes. And then we have to pack the module to be able to install it. So let's do that. And now, as we can see, we have this ISO example Bitcoin zip here. So, and then I think, yes, we can see that here, this ISO example Bitcoin. And now we'll actually do a live demo, which to install this in our apps. So I'm using AirDrop here to send that to my phone. And of course, the way how you would usually do that in a real secure environment would not be through AirDrop or any other kind of wireless connection. You would do it either by inserting an SD card or using like a USB stick to not have a network connection on your offline phone. So now that is transferred, and we can quickly go here, I think. Yes. So here we have my phone. So that's where I just sent this package to. So now let's open the secure application AirGap Vault first. So as you can see, I set it up already. So I have a normal mnemonic here with an Ethereum address, but I don't, and if we check now, if I want to add a new coin, we have as option, we have all the coins that we support. So we have rootstock, we have Bitcoin, Tezos, and so on. So now I'm going to the settings. I click on isolated modules. Here we can see that we already have one installed. So this is built in because we audited it. And now we can open the file explorer and we see this ISO example Bitcoin 3. So I click on this and then it provides me with some metadata. So those are things that we defined in the step before here. So as a user, you would verify that it's really the right public key and so on. And then you click install and we can see that it's installed here, and it also says when it was installed. So if we now go back to the mnemonic, we can see that on top we actually have two new protocols, which are the examples. So now let's choose the SegWit one and click create. And now we will have this address available. Well, or at least I hope. I tested it before and it did work. So maybe this is just let me quickly kill this. Try it again. Oh, interesting. So, okay, the module is still here. So now it's down here. Let's create the SegWit one. And now it worked. So here we can see we have this Bitcoin account here. Now, I cannot yet sync this to AirGap Wallet because AirGap Wallet does not yet have this module installed. So I'm going here, doing the same thing. Actually, I think I had it. I forgot to remove it from my testing, but let's just remove it and then add it again. So install, and now AirGap is also ready. So let's go back, click here, sync, app switching. Okay, so incompatible code. So let's try another way. Click here, and then I'm going to copy the code over and paste it here. And now we can see that we have this example available here. We can see the address, we can see the balance, we can see the dollar value. So basically that's it. Now we could do a transaction. It would create a QR code for the offline vault, and that's basically it. So now we created a module, we packed it, we signed it, we sent it to the phone, we installed it in both apps, and then we are able to use it. Yeah, I think that's it for the live demo. So let's go back to the presentation. So, okay, so yes, this is basically just, again, I have some slides here as backup if it didn't work. So basically this is what is actually in the package that we sent to the phone. And this is, we saw before. Yeah, and as already mentioned, of course you would not do this with AirDrop, but rather through an SD card or a USB stick. Okay, so I think here it's basically just the same thing that we did just now. Let's skip through this. It's a little laggy. Okay, so yes, I think that's the end of it. So thanks everyone for listening. Now, of course, we hope that this new feature inspires some of you developers to give it a shot and add new chains to AirGap. It's if you have any questions or if you would like to tackle this, then please reach out to us. We are very happy to help. Especially in the beginning, it can be maybe a little bit. It can seem like a lot of work, so feel free to reach out and we can help you in the beginning with the first steps. But especially if you're already very familiar with a specific chain, then the kind of the process of creating such a module out of it is pretty straightforward, because as I mentioned, you basically just have to put it into the interface that we defined, so it works in our apps. But you don't have to do any rocket science or invent any new QR code formats or anything. You just have to implement the methods that we require and then do the signing and all of that, and then you already have your module. Yes, so I see there is one question about the documentation. So where it is. So the website is called support.airgap.it, and you can see it if you scroll down a little on the left side. It's called isolated module, and here you'll find everything that you need. I'm not sure if it's linked, but this code that I showed you is in this AirGap community repository. So I think this is a very good starting point where you can look at the Bitcoin or even the rootstock implementation, get a little bit familiar with how it's structured, and then reach out if you have any questions. Yeah, so we would love to see more community modules. I think there are some low-hanging fruit, like for example Litecoin, Dogecoin, that could easily be done because they work almost like Bitcoin. So it's basically just taking our Bitcoin module and changing a few things. So that would definitely be something that people could try. But of course, we'd also be happy to have some more so complex integrations, maybe Monero or I don't know. Like the sky's the limit. So it's up to you guys. Yeah, I think that's it. So if there are, where is the slide? I always lose the slides. Yes, if there are no more questions, then I think that's it. Thanks everyone for your attention, and see you in the. You can reach us on Discord or Telegram. So see you in one of those channels. Bye.